again, new computer. Much better.
You have a new computer?
I got a new laptop.
Did you spill water on your old one?
I did not. I did not.
Did it get stolen because you were drunk in a casino? Because that's how I lost my phone this weekend.
No, it was just a bunch of little things. Like one of the things was the camera never worked ever at any point. I am using the Logitech camera right now because it's better anyway. But I was sick of that. Also, it didn't have enough USB ports. It was just kind of a hassle to travel with. And also, I found out Reason comps you for getting a laptop up to $800.
Nice.
So I went, I think I'll buy a $1,000 laptop. And got that for the trip. Seems to be it working well, but I'm having to, iron out all the little difficulties and things.
The little bips and bobs.
Exactly. Yeah.
How was your trip? We actually got an email about this. How was your vacation rides? I was just in Sweden and Denmark traveling from the Nova region. Did you enjoy the break in the sweltering heat that we've been getting? I know I love those 60-degree nights. However, it looks like you may have ironically missed the low point of our summer swelter. Wondering if you put yourself into the karaoke booth of the ABBA Museum or got yourself over to Skansen. I thought it was an interesting exhibit, especially for an outdoors museum that was created by moving literal buildings hundreds of years ago.
I had a great time. Now, apparently, weather-wise, my timing's been all off because I left Washington, D.C. a day before the temperature dropped. I did get there before they federalized the police, so maybe the window was good, but the temperature dropped right after I left, and I'm now in Scotland where they're having a heat wave and they don't have air conditioning. So my timing was poor this year. That being said, Scandinavia and Finland, since Finland is not Scandinavian, as I was told many times by my new Finnish friends, because they speak a Uralic language as opposed to a Germanic language. So in the Nords, where I was, I had a wonderful time. It was a really fun trip. Stockholm, that the listener writes in about, is a beautiful city. Stockholm is an archipelago of old Baroque architecture that didn't get bombed during the war, so it's these just splendid avenues of gorgeous homes and gorgeous buildings. I went to the Vasa Museum, which is super cool. The Vasa Museum's great. So in 1627, they built this big-ass galleon. Like, picture a pirate ship in your head. And it went 30 feet and sank like a fucking rock. Just boom, right out the gate. Like, didn't even make it out of the harbor. Just sunk. And in the 50s, the Swedes went, we could raise that and turn it into a museum. And that's what they did. They hauled it out of the harbor. They cleaned the whole thing. They built a museum around it. So it's this really cool museum. I went there, and I went to the ABBA Museum. And did a meetup. Had some people come. I think Weston listens to the show. Howdy, Weston. It was a pleasure to meet you. And then got an interview in, too. And then I puttered off to Norway, which is a splendid arboreal country.
Do you have any questions about the Nords, Jen?
No, I don't. I was just kind of focused on when you said Baroque. I was like Baroque-ass bitch.
Exactly. Yes.
It's early over here.
I think you should name your vacation, since you had such a fun time. You should just call it a kick in the Nords, because that was what it was.
I like that. I made myself a playlist while I was over there because Jen, you'll like this. I took several train rides while I was over there. And the penultimate day that I had in Scandinavia, I took a train from Flam to Oslo. It was a 7-hour train ride. And I made a 7-hour playlist called Nord Me Up that was a combination of ABBA, Finnish bluegrass, and Norwegian country. Apparently, there's a lot of Norwegian country music that I learned by getting really drunk at a karaoke bar in Bergen.
What language is it in?
It's Norwegian, but it sounds very country. Like at one point, like they're like "Hundel, hundel," and then you hear like "cluck cluck," and you're like, "Oh, that's a shotgun. I know that bit." I don't know exactly what they're singing about, but my guess is it's something about how city life is not as good as rural life, and wasn't it better when things were simpler? It's something about a woman in blue jeans. I'm guessing it's something like that.
Nice.
Yeah. Was that when you were just sending me voice notes of people at a karaoke bar?
Yeah. So I was in Bergen for 2 nights, and my second night there, I'd already done my hiking around and stuff, and was like, well, you know, people in Scandinavia are fairly private. They're friendly, but they're not very interactive. So, like,
Yeah.
if you interact with people, they're very nice, but it's just a part of their culture not to get into anybody else's zone if they're a stranger. So, like, for example, I wore a cowboy hat the entire time I was there, and one person mentioned it the entire time. It's like that's the level of don't bother other people that they have. So I thought, well, I'll go to a karaoke bar. That'd be a good way to meet folks. And I showed up, and I was the only person there for an hour. So I was just like, well, I guess I'll just practice all the ABBA songs that I learned that I'm afraid to embarrass myself with. Then some dudes came in, and I was really excited because I was like, well, now we're a karaoke bar. And they were like, okay, then. So they sat next to me, and then a couple other, we formed this little posse. We all sat on couches near each other, and we would just alternate them doing Trondrock, which is Trondheim-based country music from Norway. And then I would do ABBA, and they'd lose their minds. And then I would go, you know, one of the people in ABBA is actually half Norwegian, so it's basically a Norwegian band. Then everybody would cheer. It was a lot of fun.
Got you.
Why did you choose to wear a cowboy hat the entire time?
I erroneously figured that it would compel people to come interact with me. I find that when I wear the cowboy hat in Washington, D.C., it immediately makes people hate me or want to come up and talk to me. Like, it's a very galvanizing object. People come up and they're like, oh, hey, like, where'd you move from? Like, you know what, I used to live in Texas. Or they give me the most intense side eye I've ever seen. Like, they look at me with this look of like, I know you're Doge and you probably hate black people. I don't know what's going through their mind, but like, it really,
That's
really
a lot to hide in a
terrifies-
10-gallon hat.
Yeah. And so I figured cowboy hat in Scandinavia, I'm going to be the only person in this entire peninsula with a cowboy hat. People are going to want to come talk to me. And nope, no one. The
Not the
only thing
case.
I noticed is there's a slight uptick when you go through, like if you're going to a counter or customs or something, where people will force you to acknowledge you don't speak their language. I've never had this happen before. Everywhere else in Scandinavia, they speak better English than I do. And when you walk up, they just like, hello. I go, hello. And then we're off to the races with English, right? But when I would wear a cowboy hat, occasionally people would like speak Norwegian to me or Swedish. And then after a couple, like, I'd be like, I'm sorry, I don't speak language. They go, oh, do you speak English? And I'd be like, you fucking know I speak English. I have this long English voice.
You would
face. I'm wearing
kind
a
of pass
cowboy hat.
for it, though. Like, if I
think?
walked through the streets of Stockholm, nobody would confuse me with a local. But I feel like you would. You've got kind
No,
of the stretch aesthetic.
We all agree that I'm a storm of mayonnaise. Nobody's contesting that. But I'm not even ultra blonde. Like, I'm not quite that blonde. And I've got a pretty bog standard Yorkshire face. I look like a claymation character from an English film. I get that. I've made peace with that. The Finns, all the men look like Ned Flanders, or like they're going to a rock concert, like a hard metal rock concert. And then in Norway, they look like Targaryens with bunny chins. Like, there's this very like specific, and then Swedes just kind of generally Nordic, from what I could tell. So I think I stood out.
And that was the purpose. Like, you don't want to assimilate at all. You're just like, I want to be the cartoon American Red Stater.
Have you
and
met
see
him?
what happens.
Jen,
Well, the thing
I
is,
am a cartoon. I am a cartoon.
He is a cartoon.
but you're a cartoon elitist, and then every once in a while you decide, like, I'm gonna go full blown Oklahoma, and I never really know, like, which side is he gonna lean into?
Yeah.
Is it sweater vest day or is it cowboy
Is he
hat?
ashamed of his upbringing or not? That's really the two sides of the coin.
But if I assimilated though, Jen, there would have been zero talking at all, because they don't interact with strangers. I guess it would have been the same. But my theory was, it was proven wrong. You're right, Jen. But my theory was that I'd be at a bar and people would be like, cowboy hat, let's talk to that guy. Didn't happen, but it was worth trying.
I mean, maybe that would have worked 20 years ago, but I think now it's like, cowboy hat, Trump voter, stay the fuck away from him.
I don't think
weirdly-
no. I don't think that that's the calculus. I think that
What do you think
there
it
is
is?
a certain sliver of European that just does not like talking to strangers.
Yeah, I think that's the main. I mean,
Yeah.
like again,
We
they're
are
very
strange.
nice.
Like, we are internationally well known as
Yeah.
being stranger talkers.
Yes. And again, they were nice. They were very friendly. I had nothing but good experiences. But they are very private. Like, they don't interact with strangers. Weirdly enough, though, Jen, of the people I spoke to, I don't think anybody brought up politics once when I was there. I did discuss politics when I was in Sweden when I did a meetup, but those are people that already knew me, and then I interviewed somebody, so I was already talking to them about economics and stuff. But otherwise, no one brought up politics, which I was quite pleased by. But I think that there is also a presumption that I've noticed when I'm in Scotland. Like when I came here back like 2012, they'd say things like, well, tell me now, are you going to vote for Obama or for Romney? And then when Trump came in, they were just like, well, you've got a passport, you're not voting for Trump. And like that has just kind of been the presumption, and I think that was the presumption in Scandinavia as well, was you have a passport, you're probably not a Trump guy, or maybe they just didn't want to fight, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd be curious to be in their heads to see what they thought of the hat. So.
One last thing on your travels, Heaton. You sent me a picture outside. I don't know which airport, but please
Oslo.
explain to the audience.
Yeah, let me pull this up. This was so jarring to me. I saw this coming into Oslo Airport from the train.
This, by the way, all of the communication that I got from Heaton was a very drunk karaoke bar that made me think like, well, the heater is on one right now. And then just a screed about this one photo out in front of the airport that he flew to Scotland from.
Yeah, so this is Oslo Airport, and I'm leaving the train to go into the airport, and there's just a billboard with fucking John Kerry on it. There's no explanation. Just, you remember John Kerry? Probably not. Most people don't. But John Kerry ran for president of America back in 2004. 2004, thank you. 2004. I wasn't even born yet. And there's just John Kerry on a billboard that says, thank you for visiting, and then some Norwegian. And I was like, why? And I texted Justin because I was so thrown off by it. Is John Kerry the Prime Minister of Norway? Then, before he had a chance to respond, like, is Norway such a rinky-dink country that John Kerry visiting is them going, wow, we're really on the map. Let's put him on a billboard. So I think that might be it.
So I think I might be conflating this, but maybe somebody can fact check this for me. But when all of the USAID stuff was happening, the USAID stuff, I remember seeing some gigantic picture of John Kerry in some random, it wasn't that one, but it was at some random place in the world. And it was in conjunction with money that was coming in from USAID. So I don't know whether or not that was like a conditional part of getting money from the American government, was that you had to put whatever John Kerry's role was in the Biden administration on a poster for something. But that when you sent that to me, that was my first thought, was like, where did I see a gigantic random picture of John Kerry before? And it was during all the USAID stuff.
Yeah, wasn't he
please
like
tell
the
me
US
we weren't
envoy for climate change or
climate
some
change,
bullshit?
Yeah,
Okay.
that could be it. But if for the record, if we're giving aid money to Norway, we really should shut down USAID. Like if Norway's a recipient of our aid money, they're doing fine. They're an oil country with a sovereign wealth fund.
I mean, maybe it was like, we were giving them money so they would do something climate-y.
Or maybe there was some joint program where the Norwegians and us were giving money to like Abu
Well, we
or
don't
to
have any
Djibouti
Norwegian
and-
people on signs, so the money's going one direction if John Kerry's on a billboard somewhere.
Yeah, I think I want to say we give like, I think the United States, it's either 40% or 60% of all global aid is from the United States. Like, it's like a hugely disproportionate amount, but doesn't seem to be making us very popular. I don't see it may be where they're getting it, but no one I talked to in Europe was aware of that.
Yeah.
Well, we're not doing it anymore, so there might be some anger about yanking that money back out of nowhere.
Yes, but
preparations
the
in place.
preceding 15 years, whenever I
We were
visited
number
Europe,
one.
they would always say, we're so pleased with all the money America gives to the rest of the world. You're such a generous country. It was always forefront.
Maybe they just needed 2 billboards of John Kerry.
Yeah.
From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young. From a beach in Southern California.
I'm Jennifer Briney.
And from Edinburgh, Scotland,
I'm Andrew Heaton.
we're not wrong on this edition of the program. Now reconnoitered, we will discuss that DC police takeover that Heaton mentioned by the federal government, as well as Treat-o-nomics. Is this adorable trend a sign of a deep and dark recession? We will discuss along with your emails. Jen, you're going to be invaded by volleyball players. Please explain yourself.
I am, and I'm very excited about it, actually, because this weekend is the Manhattan Beach Open, which is the most important beach volleyball tournament in the United States. It's the one everyone wants to win, because when you win it, you get a plaque with your name that goes on the Manhattan Beach Pier. It's a tradition that started in the 1960s, and so it's going pretty far down the pier now. And Austin's Best, her name is actually Leah Best, is coming to stay with us with her partner, and so they're going to try and qualify for the big tournament. And then they'll be here the whole weekend because we're hoping she'll get in. But yeah, Thursday is the qualifier. It's an absolute dogfight. It's so fun to watch because it's a single elimination one-day tournament. And if you win it, you're in. And if you don't, you're just chilling for the rest of the weekend. Yeah, it's so fun. And then the actual tournament is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So, and I have to skip Sunday. I'm so pissed because I'm going to Podcast Movement, which I love. I get to see all my podcast friends, but I have to leave in the middle of the finals. So I'm going to be there for the whole tournament, and then I'll have to have someone text me what the result is. But it's going to be such a fun weekend. So I have Leah and her partner, and then Leah's wife, who's one of my friends from Austin, is going to be staying here, and we're just leaning all in on this tournament. And then 3 of my coaches are playing in it too. So we're just going to bop around and like cheer for the people that we know. And
oh, that's phenomenal.
It's going to be
great.
so fun. Yeah, I'm really excited.
Any betting favorites?
I mean, to win the tournament?
Yeah.
On the women's side, my money's on Taryn. She just got married. Taryn Brasher, I think is her new name. Taryn Cloth is how people knew her in the Olympics. And Kristen Nuss. And then the men's side, so we have a gold medalist. His name is Phil Dahlhauser, and this is going to be his last tournament. And so
really?
he's pairing up with this guy named Trevor Crabb. And Trevor wants the record for how many times he's going to be on the pier. I think he's on there 4 times, and this would be his 5th. And so they've paired up, and they're trying to win it. And so, like, I would like to see them win it just because that's really fun.
It's a cool story.
It is, but I think Andy Manesh and Miles Partain are going to take it because they're young. They play this style that's actually the Norwegians and the Swedish kind of started it, where they do like indoor type volleyball on the sand. So they do crazy stuff, and these 2 have picked up the habit, and they're so fun to watch. And so I think they're my favorites right now. It's not hard to bet on the Olympians, which is what I just did.
There we go.
So
get your money in, folks. Get your money in.
Well, and the tournament will be aired somewhere. That's the problem with the AVP. I can't tell you where, but if you go on the avp.com, you can watch at least some of it. Yeah, so.
Is it like on TV or is it a streaming thing?
So that's what's frustrating.
ESPN, the Ocho?
They have some kind of contract with Bally's. So for some games, you have to watch them on Bally's app. They have a contract with CBS. They put some of them on YouTube. It's incredibly frustrating to be a fan right now of the AVP. So that's why it's like, it used to be I could be like, watch it on NBC or watch it on YouTube. And now it's like, it could be fucking anywhere.
I think that, I mean, it's the same thing with the NFL, with the NFL season starting.
Yeah.
I think the count was if you wanted to watch every NFL game, you have to have like 8 different streaming services because they'll have like 1 or 2 games on a streaming service on, for Amazon Prime or Netflix or whatever.
Yeah, we can't as spectators allow this to become the norm because it's horrible as a
It's
fan.
already. I mean, look, we killed cable. We hated cable. We killed the old gods, and we didn't know that the new gods would be worse. This is a tale as old as time.
I guess that's true. I just thought the new gods would like create their own platforms. Like I thought like
They
AVP would just air their shit on avp.com, and then NFL, you would get the NFL channel and get everything there instead of making these contracts with all the different platforms. It's just somehow it's worse.
It was always going to be more profitable to sell to somebody else who wanted to pay.
Yeah.
That's, wrestling presaged this. Wrestling was one of the first, WWE was one of the first companies to go all in, to ditch the pay-per-view model and just say, you give us your money directly, direct to the consumer. And then they realized, we don't like running a streaming service. We're not good at it. People complain about the fact that it sucks, or it's out, or it's bad, or they weren't able to watch it. You want to know what would be a lot easier? We go to somebody who already runs a streaming service, and we just say, money, please, and then money shows up. And that's ultimately what's happened with all of this.
Well, the International Volleyball Tour has figured it out. They run their own service. It's vb.tv. And for like $8 a month, it's fantastic. You can watch every game. I love it. So that's why I'm getting more
everything's
international.
walkable, and there's trains. We get it.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
President Trump invoked Section 740 of the 1973 Home Rule Act to declare a crime emergency in Washington, D.C., placing the Metropolitan Police Department under temporary federal control and deploying roughly 800 National Guard troops to the city under Attorney General Pam Bondi's direction. The unprecedented move sparked controversy. City officials, including Mayor Muriel Bowser, denounced it as, quote, unsettling and unprecedented, end quote, noting that violent crime in D.C. had actually declined to a 30-year low. Supporters, including the police union, called the intervention a critical stopgap, but urged that it be strictly temporary. Critics dismissed it as a politically motivated stunt, citing parallels to past tactics and viewing the action as a symbolic overreach of executive authority. If you've not been following the roots of this story, it began when former Doge staffer Edward Big Balls Korestein tried to thwart a carjacking and got the literal dog shit beat out of him. He was, bleeding. The pictures were obviously serious, but it is crazy that Big Balls of Doge fame was part of this escalation. Mr. Andrew Heaton, adjacent D.C. resident. Is this legal? And is federal intervention in cities with high crime rates inherently a bad thing?
It is legal, but I also think it's a stunt, and I don't like it. Let me start with the legal stuff first. Legally, I think they're fine. I know that there are some constitutional problems with it. Perhaps there are. Jen, if you have some, I might well defer to you on it. But thus far, in my reading of it, Section 740 that you mentioned earlier, Justin, is short and pretty clear on this one. It says that the president can federalize the police force in Washington, D.C., if there's an emergency as determined by the president. That's the wording of the statute, is that the president gets to determine it. So normally, I would have some problems with invoking an emergency. I agree with the analysis that was brought up earlier that I don't think that D.C. is aberrant compared to other major cities in terms of crime, nor do I think that there's an aberration in crime within D.C. There was a spike around 2020 for obvious reasons. It's been declining since that time. So I would not say that there's an emergency there in the sense that something is different than normal, but it's not my call legally. It is the president's call. The statutory law that has been signed and is on the books enables the president to make that judgment call himself. That's really not up for debate. So I think he's fine on that. The rest of the statutory law regarding it is that the president can do it for, I think, 48 hours unless the president notifies Congress in writing that he plans to do it for 30 days, at which point he has the ability to federalize the police for 30 days or until Congress determines that the emergency has no longer occurred and orders them to stop, whichever one happens first. So within that 30 days, the president can federalize the police. The president also has the ability to call in the National Guard. The National Guard, under normal circumstances, has two lines of command. It's the governor and it's the president. In this case, D.C. is always under the discretion of the president. It is the federal city. That is the seat of the capital. So I think in both instances, it is legal, and I don't think there's a lot of wiggle room for that unless they exceed that 30-day limit or Congress somehow gets its shit together and orders them not to do it, and they continue to do it or something like that. So I don't think that there's a lot of latitude there for it being illegal or unconstitutional. That brings us to the next question, which is it a good idea?
Yeah.
I would say no for the following reasons. I don't think that there's been some crazy spike in crime quite the opposite. It's been going down. There is crime. I have friends that have had the shit beaten out of them that didn't work for the Trump administration. And there are definitely parts of D.C. that are gritty. I think that the good faith argument to make for the Trump administration would be that Washington, D.C. belongs to all American citizens, or rather the federal agencies located there belong to all American citizens. They should have an unencumbered ability to visit those agencies and their representatives. And if they are being encumbered by crime, then the executive has a role of removing that crime to allow unfettered access, something like that. Okay, there's a case to be made there. Based on my paltry understanding of the crime that's in D.C., it's not in the touristy areas. It's not in the parts that you would go to if you want to visit Congress, if you want to visit any of these agencies. It's more in the residential areas that people that are visiting aren't likely to go to. The crime is bad in the sense that all crime is bad, but it is going down. And I'm not really clear on what federalizing the police is apt to do. In fact, I think that will probably cause more problems than not, because for 30 days, the police are now going to be run by the Attorney General, who I don't know is going to have specific criteria that they're going to use to rearrange what's happening in the police force. I think, if anything, what this is going to do is cause a lot of confusion in terms of the chain of command that occurs within Washington, D.C. So I doubt that it's apt to do anything. There could be material relief that results from having the National Guard come in. They originally were going to bring in a lot more. I think presently the number is smaller. It's like maybe 700 people are going to come in for the National Guard. I think that there's pretty good data that if you've got a lot of street crime going on and you post more cops where the street crime is, that it's apt to go down. So I think that there's a basic rationale there. Again, I don't know that they're going to be dispatching it to the residential areas, and even then we're kind of getting outside of the federal mandate of trying to get people to be able to see the federal agencies. I think that this is Trump being flashy, and Trump wanting to make headlines because everybody's head's going to explode, and all of my friends that think that we're living on the vanguard of a Nazi apocalypse are going to take this as proof positive that the Trump administration is seizing control and things like that. So I think that this is largely for media purposes. The part that bothers me about this is really twofold. They're both long-term stuff that I'm looking at. One is I don't like the idea ever. It's possible we get to the point where we need to send in the National Guard for riots and such, but I don't like it, and I don't like the idea that we have military reserves being used for civil law. I think that should always feel very uncomfortable to Americans, and I don't want to get to the point where we're used to that. I want to stave off the day where we have military personnel administering law as long as I possibly can. I don't wish to make people used to that. The other bit that kind of worries me about this too is pre-Trump, I'd been saying for a while, when you get a government that is sclerotic and it's just it's rammed up and unable to do anything, there's a certain limited government perspective that goes, terrific, the government's not doing anything. But if you have it kind of do nothing for long enough, people start going, it's all bullshit. We just need a guy to come in and take action and break some heads. And I think that that's part of what this is catering to, of this is action. It's decisive elements of coming in and calling in the army. And I don't really like any of this. So long story short, yes, I think it's legal. I don't think it's going to solve the problem that may or may not exist there anyway, and I don't like the overall overtones of the implications of it.
Jen, I'm going to go to you in a second, but Heaton, I want to ask you a question about the crime rate, because there's one thing that's a little bit bothered me with the idea that, oh, well, the crime rate is going down. It is still high relative to... I don't know what the idea of, oh, no, this action needed to be timed exactly to the peak of violence in D.C. Like, I don't really understand that point.
I think if I got the shit beat out of me in any city, then I would be very disinclined to bring up statistics. I think anybody that's on the receiving end of being mugged, being stabbed, being shot, being raped, anything like that, is not going to find a lot of palliative relief in knowing that the overall macro data is a trending thing. So I agree with that general perspective that any amount of murders is too high. Any amount of robbery is too much.
But I mean, it is still elevated comparatively to what people would understand as a low crime era of DC. And that's before we get into whether or not the statistics that are being kept are as accurate as they might, be labeled to be in terms of classifying certain things as misdemeanors as opposed to felonies.
Truthfully, Justin, I don't know. I don't know the full ins and outs of the crime rates. I can give you a general perspective that I may be like 50% confident on, which was that D.C.'s historically been very crime-ridden. And you go back to the Marion Barry years. Marion Barry, peace be upon him, who was a really fun mayor. A really fun mayor. Bitch set me up. Bitch set me up. His best quote outside of bitch set me up was, actually, D.C. has a very low crime rate except for the murders. Yeah. Which statistically was accurate at the time. So that's true. When I moved to D.C. for the first time back in whenever the fuck I came, 2010, it was kind of on the downward slope. So at that time, there were neighborhoods that were still kind of gritty, but they weren't really dangerous anymore. Like maybe if you went out there around midnight, you get hit in the face with a sock full of pennies, but it was, you weren't going to get mugged in broad daylight. Like Capitol Hill, where I used to live, used to be very dangerous. It's now where all the lobbyists live that couldn't afford a home in McLean, Virginia. So there was a decline. It had been a steep decline going on from, I want to say, like 2000 until 2020. Then there was a huge spike in D.C. in particular. It was in all major American cities. D.C., I think, spiked more than other major American cities, and it has been going down since that time. My guess is, and I don't know this, my guess is that you're right, that it's probably more elevated now than it was 10 years ago, but less elevated than it was in 1990. So, yeah, it is elevated. I would like to know then what they plan to do to change that. Are they going to do anything different in policing practices? What I've seen the Trump administration bring up is that no bail policies are a failure. For anybody unfamiliar with this, there's been a big push in criminal justice reform in the United States to get away with bail, the idea being that it sort of makes it inaccessible to poor people, things like that. I think that is a reasonable argument to make. I've spoken to some people that work in criminal justice, and while I've kind of been on the get rid of bail camp myself, they had some pretty good data that pushed back on it. But I don't think that the Trump administration can do that by federalizing the police force, because Congress is still ultimately the one that dictates policy in Washington, D.C. The local council can pass laws, but they're subject to approval by Congress. Trump doesn't have the ability to come in and say the law is going to be changed. Yeah. He has the ability to assume administrative control of the police officers administering the law. So I don't know what they're going to do differently. I do think that it could be a palliative relief in terms of just having more people on the beat. I think generally when you add cops, it tends to lower crime. So if they're going to have, if they're going to send over National Guard units to neighborhoods that are particularly crime-ridden, yeah, you might see a reduction in it for 30 days.
Jen, what do you think?
So I don't think the point is how much crime there is in D.C., because D.C. is the second city to experience emergency powers be used by the Trump administration to federalize or they didn't federalize our police force out here in Los Angeles, but they did send in the National Guard without the request of Governor Newsom for riots that weren't happening. So it's like here in Los Angeles, it was the first city where we saw them inflate a danger and then send in the military. And then here we are again in D.C., where it's like there's no event other than big balls getting carjacked but like that's not a national emergency. Like it sucks for big balls. He doesn't deserve it. His girlfriend or whoever that chick was didn't deserve it. But that doesn't mean it's a national emergency. And I think that that's what makes me feel so uncomfortable about all of this, is that it feels like an abuse of emergency powers to get the military onto the streets. And as Andrew said, I agree with every single word that Andrew said. I am also concerned that this is a way to get martial law to feel normal, because we've now got two cities. He's talking about expanding it to other cities. DC is different because there is a legally unique relationship. So where Los Angeles, that really feels illegal to a lot of us, and they're working it out in the courts right now. What he's doing in DC is legal. But I think it's important that it's the second city that he's sending the military into. And I think it also speaks to just the overall abuse of emergency powers that we've seen from the executive branch going back many, many decades. I do this thing on Congressional Dish called Last Week in Congress. And so I'm reading through the congressional record every week just to be like, this is what they did. And I'm telling you, every single week there is a national emergency that was declared decades ago that is continued because we're doing some kind of war stuff in that country. And so there's an abuse of emergency powers. We saw it with the border. You know, like during the first Trump administration, he declared an emergency, was trying to get defense money to go and build a wall. Like, we don't really define emergency in a way that constrains the president from doing anything. And Trump is just more willing than others to abuse it in somewhat absurd ways. So that's my biggest concern here. And then one last thing I want to add to what Andrew said, because like I said, I agree with everything he said. But I also want to point out that the Trump administration, or Trump specifically while doing this, was talking about how this was, the attack on Big Balls was by roving gangs of juveniles. They're all, you know, thugs is what he's calling them. And he's saying that as a part of this, they want to start treating 14-year-olds as adults. And I just finished reading The Big Beautiful Bill, and one of the things they did for work requirements is they really changed the age of when a child is considered an adult in terms of the parent needing to go to work. It used to be if you have a child under the age of 18 at home, then you're excused from work requirements. They changed that to the age of 14. And so I just kind of see those two as problematic, because I think one of the reasons why you're able to have, you know, kids that are unsupervised out in the world is that their parents aren't around. Like, I remember back in the 90s, remember it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Mm-hmm. Like, one of the reasons that they were doing that is they didn't want kids unsupervised at night, just being able to raise hell while their, you know, prefrontal cortexes aren't fully formed. And so here you have the Republicans on one hand saying, like, these kids are adults at the age of 14 in terms of, like, your parents could be at work. You don't need your parents at home. And then the Trump administration is like, we're going to treat these 14-year-olds as adults and crack their skulls. You know, like Trump is openly saying he wants the police to be more violent in their policing. So it all just feels very, and I know this is such a buzzword, but I think it fits. It all feels very authoritarian to me. And my concern is that DC is just number 2 on a list that is not done. I'm afraid they're going to try this in other cities. I know Chicago's probably on the list because that's one he's picked on that forever. That's where Barack Obama is from. The south side of Chicago has violence. They seem to be targeting blue cities. I don't think this ends with DC. I think he's testing out to see what we'll put up with. That's my concern.
I think that my take on this is similar to my take on federally or state-funded stadiums. Like, I agree with everything you guys have said. I also think this will be popular if it brings crime down. Because I do think that life in big cities throughout my adult existence has had what I would consider a high crime rate in major cities. And I've largely lived my life in major cities, either in New York City or the San Francisco, Oakland Bay Area. I've joked about how I wanted Oakland to be taken over by Blackwater. So, like, you know, the National Guard would be a step down from where my proposed solution was in terms of trying to bring, especially during lockdown. Yeah. You know, I would have been fine with tanks rolling through Oakland, you know, just to keep the violence down when nobody had anything to do, and you did have actual roving gangs. That was one of the moments where I was like, I've got to get out of Oakland, because there were multiple reports of just 30 cars, like it was Mad Max, like running into a Best Buy in Emeryville and just ransacking the place and leaving. And that still has happened on a, I mean, at least it breaks through my national filter that there'll just be 80 kids that run into a gas station, smash it up, grab everything in there and run out, because they know that there's nothing that's going to stop them. Now, does that take away the civil rights issues? Does that take away the questions of authoritarianism? No, it doesn't. But if it makes street life safer for people who spend a tremendous amount of money for the privilege of living in some of the glittering cities that are among the most famous in the world, so they can have their careers, so they can make money, so they can raise a family, I don't think that it's going to be unpopular. And that's why I think that some of the reaction to this has been a little bit more muted than even the California example, and I'm glad you brought that up, Jen, with sending in the National Guard over the head of Newsom and Bass, is that was a scenario where clearly there was already anger about Donald Trump, and now Donald Trump was kind of reacting to it. Where here, there's a lot of dialogue outside of DC, but some of the people inside have not really been that vocal about it, at least to my estimation, because, you know, there are a lot of carjackings, there are a lot of stabbings, there are a lot of robberies. I mean, there was a question of whether or not initially the Washington Wizards and Capitals were talking about building a stadium in Virginia. And part of it was because they weren't able to get guarantees from the city on beefing up crime. They wound up a prevention against crime. They wound up making the deal to stay in the area where they are in Chinatown there. But that was a major issue. So whether or not we're at the absolute peak of DC crime, the falling crime rate I find a little bit hollow, because it assumes that it's going to keep decelerating at a certain level to the point where it would be lower than people's expectations. And I don't think that there's any guarantee about that a stalled crime rate that's still higher than average is something that should be dealt with. Now, the city obviously has had trouble dealing with this back beyond Muriel Bowser. You know, as Heaton mentioned, certain leaders and certain city councils have had a better track record with it, but DC's in a rough place for a lot of different reasons. And if for whatever is of this, and I do agree that it's largely Trump flicking every switch he has possible access to, which has kind of been his MO. I don't know if it will be unwanted by the end of it if there are less rapes, murders, and robberies in a 30-day period compared to what happened before.
I guess I just question, like, the popularity is going to be determined based on who you feel more threatened by. Because if you feel more threatened by each other, then maybe that's true. But there's a lot of us that feel threatened by the cops. I mean, I generally don't, because I have a complexion that geishas would be jealous of. But, like, for other people to see cops with guns who have the authority to use them, and the president of the United States, like, saying, I want you to crack these heads, that is probably a bigger threat. I mean, I think if I were a black man in D.C., I'd be really nervous right now. If I was someone who was sleeping on a bench because I had nowhere else to go, I'd be really nervous right now.
Black communities, by polling, traditionally request more police in their neighborhoods as opposed to
I am not about to speak for the black community. Do not ask me to do so. But what I'm saying
I thought that's what you were doing right there.
No, what I'm doing right now is saying that you get to decide who you feel more threatened by. But there are people that will feel more threatened by the military walking the street, by the additional cops on the street. Not everyone feels more safe when that's the situation. So, and in some situations, I'm that person that doesn't feel more safe. Like if I'm out in a protest and I see a bunch of cops with guns, I don't feel like they're there to protect me. I'm worried that they're going to be shooting indiscriminately with those rubber bullets, which can absolutely kill people. Like, I don't feel protected when I see those lines of cops. And so there have been instances, even someone looking like me goes, this is a threat to me. This isn't for my safety. So I think it's going to depend, because if you see crime rates go down, that's one thing. But if you see more people being shot by the authorities, this could go the complete other way.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that possibility. I would not gauge feelings of safety as the vector for which it would be successful or not.
But if we're talking about popularity, that's all about feelings.
I would gauge it by rapes, murders, and burglaries. That's what I would gauge, whatever the traditional violent crime statistics are.
I want to congratulate everybody on this panel for not bringing up January 7th, which I'm now going to do. Sorry, I got to bring this up, though.
What happened on the 7th?
The day after January 7th?
Was that when everybody got Denny's?
No. It's because I'm in Scotland. We're a day ahead. On the Scottish calendar, it was January 7th. January 6th. Exactly.
January 7th, or as we call it, Prison Orientation Day.
Yeah. But I'm just like, this is part of why I don't have a lot of faith in the administration here to actually make a dent here. Like, that would have been the time to call the National Guard. I would say that constituted an emergency.
Whoa, he doesn't call the National Guard enough. Now he's calling the National Guard too much. What do you cucks want from it?
Just saying, like, I think that would have been a time to maybe be concerned with law enforcement for somebody occluding federal activities in the
I
Capitol.
know that anytime you have a conversation about DC, it's like the old, I forget who had the line about Rudy Giuliani that, every sentence is a noun and a verb in 9/11. Like anytime there's a conversation about DC, it's a noun and a verb in January 6th.
And I brought it up, but I want to throw that out there. And good job to you both for not doing that. I want to do an addendum. Jen, I loved your phrasing there. Are you more afraid of each other, or are you more afraid of cops? Now, it's very easy for me to say what I'm about to say because I live out in Alexandria. It's a nice neighborhood. I'm not dealing with things, but I'm not really worried about each other or cops. I do have a fear of the federal government. I think it's a healthy fear to have of just possible overreach of what the federal government's up to. I think that if this had happened under Obama, that Rush Limbaugh would have gone apeshit. That this would have been an incredible thing for the president to federalize the police and send in the National Guard to a major American city. I think that, by the way, that umbrage is actually quite healthy because I don't think it should be a Republican or Democrat thing. I think it's always healthy to be wary of standing troops, to be wary of federal authority in a civil area. I was in Mexico a few years ago, right after they had an election. This would have been 2007, I think. So it was when Obrador had lost to whoever ran against Obrador, vice versa. Forgive me, Mexican listeners, I don't remember the specifics. But they called in tanks, they called in soldiers to hang out in the Capitol just to ensure that if anything went down, and it made me deeply uncomfortable as an American visiting. And it was normal for everybody else to have soldiers walking around with guns to ensure that nothing bad happened. I didn't like it. I didn't like the feeling of having troops walking around a city to impose law. That struck me as something that was getting into territory that I don't feel comfortable with as an American.
I'm going to apologize if this is incorrect and somebody can fact check me, but it was a thing that I saw on social media. I've been traveling, so I wasn't able to do the research that I wanted to for this segment. But when you ask about what could be done in 30 days by way of a different federal authority that would essentially have access to, at the very least, the chain of command that might have complaints about how things were being run before, I saw that for 3 years, D.C. was not allowed to solve gun crime because they didn't have their ballistics lab certification, that they had lost it for 3 years, and only in the last 6 months have they gotten their ballistics lab certification back because they did not run it correctly. That's the kind of stuff that or not.
Who's certified? This is fascinating and this is really good data,
Yes.
but what does that mean? Is
That
there a
means that
federal authority that who does that?
The D.C. Metropolitan Police, this is the factoid that I saw. The D.C. Metropolitan Police could not, their lab was not certified to say what bullet came from what gun. And so if they were bringing a case against somebody, now had to do it with evidence that did not include ballistics lab information. And so that materially hampered investigations for gun crime, which does happen at a fair clip in D.C. It was a piece of evidence that was brought up to demonstrate that the D.C. police force has not been competently run, and that there are problems that exist in that go beyond left-right dynamics or even the stuff that tends to be my bugaboo, because I've lived in now 2 cities with progressive district attorneys who believe that people should be kept out of jail by not prosecuting them. But that is just a police thing, for which if you have people that are complaining about that internally that are just not being heard, if you put somebody else on top of the power structure, now possibly you would have an airing of grievances and possibly a correction of systemic issues within that department.
I have to say that's a reasonable point to bring up, Justin, because I'm looking at this going 30 days. I don't see, I'm almost looking at this as like the crime version of when people tried to boycott Amazon for a day, when they went,
Yeah.
I'm gonna solve all the problems by waiting 24 hours to buy the exact same shit on Amazon. I had many friends that took that position, by the way, that thought I was a monster. I didn't even find out about it until 3 days after. Also, I think Amazon's good. So I thought the whole thing was bullshit. But a lot of my friends, to show Amazon, they continued buying shit on Amazon, but they waited a day to do it. Amazon, weirdly enough, was smart enough to figure out that they were going to do that. So that was kind of my interpretation of what's going on here. Justin, you do bring up an interesting point, which is if you have if you have incompetent personnel that are entrenched in the police department in D.C., you could make the argument that having a legal outside authority come in and be able to remove incompetent or people that have bad policy chops, that it does allow for some actual change in terms of the power structure therein. I guess that's an argument.
I think, actually, now that I remember it, I think the Oakland Police Department was run federally for several years. Might still be run federally.
Really?
Because they were so incompetent. Yeah. I mean, this is the same Oakland Police Department that had to go through 5 police chiefs over a 2-week span because they had all banged
the same one.
The same underage
hooker.
hooker. The same underage hooker who just kept being like,
she should run for mayor. Like that, just in and of itself, that like she should run for mayor. She has my vote.
I think that there was, I know for at least a period of time it was run federally. So the idea that there are federal intersections with major police departments is not the rarest thing. But obviously this is a different scenario because DC is its own legal quandary of who runs it and who owns it.
Can I ask Justin on your end? We kind of we jumped to the big picture stuff, which I really appreciate. That's where I live. But from a political perspective, is Trump doing this in order to solve crime, or is this just trying to get everybody to quit talking about Epstein? Because I rather think it's him trying to get everybody to quit talking about Epstein.
I think the Epstein thing is kind of dying by itself. So I don't think that he is particularly dialed in on that. I do think that Donald Trump is a populist. Donald Trump is somebody for whom, at his most popular, is guy who wields federal authority for a thing that you would care about, which is what a populist does. What is the popular thing? What do people complain about? There are a few things that get complained about more than I got stabbed, robbed, raped, or murdered. That tends to be unpopular in
whenever I get
most
murdered,
societies.
I complain about it vociferously.
Yeah.
I got murdered last Tuesday. I hated it. 1 star.
Yeah,
would not do again.
down. So I think that this is part of what he does, and it was the reason why he threw the National Guard over the heads of Gavin Newsom, because he felt like he should have put the National Guard out there during the BLM riots in the summer of 2020. And he didn't. And so now this was, well, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you. Is that how it goes? Anyway.
We'll have to ask Bush. He had a really good one on that.
Yeah.
Shame me once, can't be shamed again.
Can't fool me again. Can't fool me again.
So I think that's what this is about. In the same thing that he did with the homeless executive order, that's another thing that he knows is a major complaint amongst city living. And so, he's going to reopen what's called like asylums and stuff like that. Or at least that's what the executive order
is that the plan? Because
moved in the
I saw that in some of the research I did for the show, that like he brought up homeless people specifically, that they were going to arrest them or kick them out or something like that.
Get rid of the slums.
I'm deeply
We're getting
moved
rid
by
of the
plight
slums.
homeless people, but a lot of the time, and I don't know the answer to this, but a lot of the time when cities talk about getting rid of homeless people, they literally mean just kicking them out.
Just move
They
them.
don't mean actually solving the problem. They just like get them into the periphery. So like, is that part of the plan? Are they going to open up homeless shelters and try to?
No, this is two different things. So he did an executive order a couple weeks ago that specifically spoke to this. I have no idea what teeth are in it, because you never know with the executive orders what are just, a bumper sticker saying I care about X, Y, and Z, and what actually matters. That doesn't just speak to Trump, but is often with Trump because he does a lot of executive orders. And then he made mention that with the federalization of the police in D.C., that they wanted more of a targeted crackdown on the slums. I have no idea what that actually means. I don't know if there are, a lot of cities have laws on the books that are just, it is decided by either the police, usually by the police force, that they're just not going to make them a point of emphasis. They're not going to enforce them. I don't know if there are those laws for public vagrancy that just are not being enforced. I don't know the details on any of that. But Trump is very much, a top-level thinker who just says, slums be gone.
I guess that's what's so disappointing. It's like they're identifying problems, but none of these tactics are designed to solve any of them. It's all optics. It's just sad.
I mean, I guess, let me ask you this though, Jen, like from a material perspective, would you rather, I mean, I guess this is like so much of politics in general. Would you rather somebody identify a problem correctly and then be ineffective in trying to solve it, or never mention it at all?
Well, right now, I just don't think that DC crime is at the point where like this is necessary. I don't think this is actually designed to solve it. I think if you were trying to solve crime, you would look at the like why people commit crimes. So if you're talking about burglaries and stuff, it could be that Americans just don't make enough money even if they're working full time. Like I tried to point out, I don't think very eloquently before, like you have them saying that we have these roving gangs of teens, and yet you're going to make sure that their parents can't be home to take care of them. Like, so on one hand, you're doing one thing, and on the other hand, you're making it worse. It's just like there doesn't seem to be strategies here. What I'm seeing with this DC thing, with the LA thing, I think they just want to look like strongmen. I think they feel like sending in the military is a strong thing to do. It looks like you're doing something. Andrew pointed this out. It looks like you're taking action, but if the action doesn't get to the root cause of why people are violent and why people steal things, you're not actually trying to solve the problem. You're just trying to look like a thing. It's
so
like
you don't see that there really is any kind of benefit of a more vigilant prosecution of like the laws that they will not be solved unless we solve the root cause of hunger or violence.
I mean, I don't think having the DEA walking around with guns in Georgetown is that, like, I do think that there's usefulness to like trying to solve crimes and stuff, but that isn't what this is. Like we've already seen what they're doing. They're just marching around with guns in the streets. It's not solving anything. You might have 30 days where it like looks scary, so people decide not to do the crimes, and then 30 days from now, we go back to normal. But what's happened, as Andrew pointed out, is now the chain of command is all fucked up. They just had 30 days where like the police chief wasn't in charge, and now he has to get back in charge. Like I think this could actually cause more chaos, which doesn't help them do their jobs. So it's like I don't think this is effective, and I don't think it's designed to be effective. I think this is designed to make Trump look strong. I think he likes sending in the military. I don't think that it's anything more strategic than that.
Yeah, I wonder if we're entering a time where there's a subset of the progressive movement that goes, if there's a problem, throw money at it, without necessarily identifying what the problem is, right? And I wonder if we're finding like a corollary of that within the conservative movement of if there's a problem, throw in the National Guard. Yeah. And you want to be able to identify the problem and explain how you're going to fix the problem. So yeah.
I would say that the LA thing made more sense to me than this from that perspective.
There were no riots here in LA.
There were riots. There might not have been as big as what you believed other people believed, but there was plenty of footage of
3 Waymos were set on fire, and the media showed it over and over and over again. Riots, that is not. There were not riots.
There were
LA
bricks
did not
and
need
stones being thrown onto police cars.
And they could handle it. The LAPD said they could handle it. And the governor said we could handle it. This was not necessary. There were not riots that required the military. Let's not go adding to the bullshit.
Can I finish my sentence?
If it's not bullshit, then sure. Saying there were riots in LA is bullshit.
I didn't say there were. You said there were riots in LA.
Andrew?
Yeah, I think there were
just
riots
say that there were riots.
Would you like to agree with Jen so we can move on?
I would say if
I think that the point was
Weibo's on fire, that crosses the line of protest to riot. If people are destroying private property, I'd call that a riot. You could say it's a small riot, or it's a containable riot, or it's a riot that the local police could deal with. I think that's germane. But I'd like if we're splitting hairs here, yeah, I'd say that constitutes a riot.
But in the context of he sent in the National Guard, you guys, let's not go saying that was
people from going into federal buildings. That was my point. That was my point. Is that well, did they do anything else? I mean, it's not like it's happening currently. It's done. It's a thing
The
in the past.
LAPD had I'm not going to go and say that this was effective and necessary and like maybe Trump was onto something. Like,
I'm
no,
not saying it
I
was
will not-
necessary. I'm saying that I understood what he was doing more there than in DC. That was my only point.
I speak,
still
Justin. I think what
think
Justin
it's
was
over
saying,
the
if
line.
I've got it right, I think Justin was saying that in that instance there was more of an immediate thing happening, and the National Guard was sent in for federal purposes to protect federal installations because people were protesting ICE. Something to that effect, Justin?
Yes.
I think that was the excuse. Yeah.
Did they do anything else?
I went down to downtown to see for myself, and what they
And
were doing
what
was
did you
standing around
see?
doing absolutely nothing. I saw them
Okay.
hanging out on their phones while the LAPD did their jobs.
Around the federal buildings?
Yes. They were sitting in
Exactly.
the lawn with the protesters. It was very weird. They were all just sitting around. Like, so
Yes.
it wasn't necessary. This was I think that we're roaming into the territory of giving a justification that sounds okay for Trump doing this, and
I think it was neat and cool. I think it was awesome. I think it made America look great.
I think you're a fucking troll.
Do you agree with me or not? Say you agree with me.
No.
All right. Well, now I'm mad.
Good. I'm always mad at you.
Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong is where you need to go if you want to get a bonus episode of this show. We're done talking politics on the episode. What are we talking about on the Patreon? We are talking about
A
a
teenager flew
teen
Antarctica.
stranded in the Antarctic. Look. Some
Roving teens.
I know, talk about roving teens. This teen was put in a Chilean military installation because he flew to the Antarctic wrong. It's a pretty crazy story, and we're going to get into it on the bonus episode. Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong. Treat-o-nomics. That's what the kids are calling it. Spending on small luxuries and big experiences despite financial strain. And it's thriving amid inflation, high interest rates, and job concerns. It is rooted in the quote-unquote lipstick effect, where affordable indulgences rise during downturns. Consumers buy makeup, candles, collectibles, and home decor instead of big-ticket items. Post-pandemic shifts in values have expanded into experiences like $200 concert tickets, even as people cut back on daily costs. Gen Z has a quote-unquote little treat culture that embraces guilt-free joy, from dog birthdays to Lego kits, replacing traditional milestones with inch stones. Economic uncertainty measured by low consumer confidence and high global policy volatility has fueled this trend. Brands must adapt to fast-moving micro-niches, as Treat-o-nomics is expected to persist for 3 to 5 years. Jen, have you treated yourself?
You know, I was initially going to say no to this because I generally don't spend my money on stupid shit. Or I kind
But
of
you
always
bought
spend my
7
money.
Labubus.
I just found out about Labubus. I'm shocked at how stupid this is. I was actually I asked the guy who was selling fake Labubus what they were.
Yeah.
And then he said, well, we actually have real Labubus and they're $150. And I was like,
Yeah.
Did they do anything? And he was like, no, they're just little stuffed animals. And he was also baffled by it, but he said people buy them and so he has them. And
Yeah.
I don't understand it. So I'm not
Hold on,
participating
before-
in that. Can anyone explain to me the Labubu phenomenon? Because he
Heaton,
couldn't
can you-
Can
explain
anybody
it.
explain to me what the fuck a labubu is? Hello, what's a labubu?
It's like a little stuffed animal. Like it's
Yeah.
just a little thing. I
But
don't
they're all-
understand.
So this is how I understand it. And again, write in Labubu fanatics if I've got this wrong. But they are a kind of doll that comes in various different versions. So they're all kind of a little bit different, but they're sold in blind boxes. So you buy them and you don't know which one you have, which incentivizes buying and trading and culture.
Like Star Trek collectible cards. You don't know
Yes,
until you
you
open
don't
know.
the pack.
Yes.
Or
But
like
it's a little
K-pop
stuffed
cards.
animal instead of cards.
And
Okay.
then you can trade it with friends and strangers, especially in a internet culture, so you can collect your entire Labubu set. But it has also created a aftermarket for knockoff Labubus which are apparently the things that Jen has found herself in whatever God knows what situation that she was offered knockoff Labubus.
They look exactly the same. They're dumb. And I just can't believe for a real Labubu, they're spending $150 each on this. If these were my children, I don't know. I would just have to give them away because you cannot spend my money on this stupid shit.
I'd hope to get at least $150 for mine. Anyway.
But I was in the store buying me and my friend a treat. We bought matching bracelets with turtles on them because her mom had recently passed away. Okay. And she was seeing turtles after that. And I also have a turtle thing. And so we decided to get matching bracelets. So I did buy myself a treat, but that actually had like sentimental value.
Yeah.
In general, when I feel financially insecure, as I do now, I tend to stop buying dumb things. Mm-hmm. And if I'm going to go to an event, I have to really want to do it. I'm not just like treat-o-nomicing myself. So I'm not, I don't think I'm doing this. And I'm kind of amazed by the phenomenon. Do you guys find that you're seeing this or doing
Heaton,
this?
I think that this is bullshit and it's a dumb article that gets written because you can rip apart economic data 19 different ways. And you can do an exact opposite version of this where it's like, hey, right now it's a big thing. People aren't going to the movies. That used to be one of the biggest recessionary flags, is that people are going to the movies more because they want to entertain themselves, but that's a cheaper way to do it than other higher ticket things. Now we're like, no. It's because they're buying $200 concert tickets. That's the recessionary signal.
Well, and the movies suck. If you're not into comic books, there's nothing for you anymore.
I watched Mickey 17 on the plane last night coming back from SF, and it was bad.
I enjoyed that. Actually. I thought it was a fun film, Mickey 17. And I thought a lot of the weird pushback I got was unnecessary because, like, the bad guy has, like, an ear wound, and they're like, oh, it's so Trump. And I'm like, normally I'd be all with you on shitting on a Hollywood film for being ham-fisted and like but like it was done before Trump got shot.
No, it's his followers wearing red hats that makes it
Trump.
That
bit. Fair. But some of it though that they were going. Anyway, I like the film.
No, I just thought it was derivative of Snowpiercer and less interesting. And why do you get to make your main character a loser who I have no like connection to? I was rooting against him the entire time. Anyway, go ahead.
I'm going to hit you up to do an alienating the audience on this, Justin, as it would be fun. So I think the like broad takeaway that I got from the story was people like dopamine, like they like treats. Yeah. I'm not terribly surprised by that. Yes, when I am stressed, I give myself little squirts of dopamine. It can be stupid, it can be frivolous, little squirts. Yeah. So like. If I'm having a tough day or I'm sad or something, it doesn't make logical sense for me to go get a sugary treat. I know that white processed sugar is one of the worst things you can do, but you know,
it's also
overall,
my nickname for you.
Yeah, white processed sugar. Yeah, but I'll get myself like a candy bar or a cookie or something, and. I think like from an economic perspective, as long as you're buying yourself small treats as opposed to like large things you really can't afford, you're probably fine. I think life is really difficult, and if you can claw joy from it anytime you can in a way that's not deleterious to you, that's a good thing. And I think that there's an argument to be made that you can do this in a responsible manner. Like if you want to get really into chocolate or cheese, like that's going to be your thing, is you're going to treat yourself to really good chocolate. You're going to spend like $20 to $40 once a month and get yourself some really good chocolate. I don't think you're going to really break the bank. It's a much less expensive habit than if you get into suits or you get into Lamborghinis or you get into watches. So like I think that there's a way you can do this where if you're thinking about it as like I'm just going to buy myself a treat, the actual good that I put in there is not that important. It's just the good itself. I think that there's a very responsible way to do it. I think your point is well taken, Justin. You could slice this any way you go, and there's a lot of bullshit in it. But I think something that I don't see this so much as there's an oncoming recession or whatever. I think that there's two phenomena going on. One, we live in a time period that probably has the most societal change in all of human history, maybe outside of the Industrial Revolution. But even then, you just kind of had one or two things per generation that you had to wrap your mind around of like, we had horses, now we got a car, fuck. But like now, like stuff's changing regularly. People don't like uncertainty. People don't like change. That causes stress. So we're living in a very stressful time. I would argue it's the best time. That this is still all things being equal. If I had to pick a lottery of when to be born and I don't know where or when and under what circumstances, I would definitely pick now. I think it's the best time. But it is a very stressful time, and that means that people are going to want to treat themselves to it. And the other thing is I think that we live in a political economy where we have enough affluence to produce all of this bullshit. We've got enough money that we can buy little tchotchkes and things, and that's part of what's happening too, is that we have enough disposable income on a micro level compared to all of the macro things of housing and all of the other things. We got enough pocket money that we can go do this. Okay, do it responsibly, have fun.
I just think that that's human nature. I just think that this article is bullshit. I don't think that this is a trend.
I totally
just think
agree.
This is just people being normal.
Yeah, people like dopamine is the takeaway. People like dopamine. Yes, I do that.
I think if anything, you can look at larger scale survey trends on optimism. You could say that some of this spending you could more correlate to younger people having less of an optimistic look at how their life is going to turn out, and maybe there is more nihilistic spending of like, well, I'm never going to have a family or a house, so I might as well spend all my money on Labubu's right now. I don't know how much of that is, again, just you thinking as a kid that nothing matters. I'm going to be a child forever. Or, money doesn't matter. Also, everything that I have understood in my life is like, if you're ever gonna spend recklessly, do it before you turn 30. Like, you being hilariously reckless with your money, even going into debt before you're 30, is probably not the worst thing to do. Now, if you rip through all your money at 45, if you rip through all your money at 50, we start to get into some big problems because you're going to be past your earning potential. But as long as you are getting your stuff together by the time that you statistically are going to earn the most money in your life, you can make up for bad decisions, because your bad decisions are going to be smaller through your teens and 20s than they will be if you start making them later in life.
What's the dumbest purchasing decision you boys have ever made?
I think I know.
Like
What?
a one-time purchase or just
like
a habit?
a thing you went and bought and you're like, fuck.
I bought a transcendental meditation course, and I think that was significantly overvalued. That I probably could have got all of that stuff that I got out of it from maybe an app that cost $6, and it cost significantly more than that.
How much did it cost?
I'm not going to say, but it was
Come on,
a dumb
be fun.
amount.
How many?
Come on.
3 or
It was
4
a-
figures?
It was $1,000. And
Okay, 4
I had
figures.
I was getting into meditation at the time, which I think is, there's benefits to it, all that stuff. And I'd had some friends that had done it, and I went, okay, this is a skill worth learning, and it's a skill worth learning that I could have learned for $40. That was the advertising the TM people have is outstanding, and you're getting something for it, but I think it's overvalued.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, every round of Jaeger bombs I bought in my 20s, which I'm sure if you actually added up the amount that my friends and I, just dipshit, spending money I didn't have. The only time that I've ever been in like bank account debt, like not like get a loan for a thing and then pay it off over time, but like actual,
Overdrawn.
I went to my HSBC account and I saw red numbers. I saw the dreaded parentheses on my account was just because I was just going to the bar too often with my friends, and we would just do rounds of shots that never were just bad. There was no purpose to them. They didn't. I mean, I guess we liked having a good time telling the same 7 stories to each other over and over and over again. but like we weren't getting laid. We weren't more interesting. We weren't doing anything other than drinking one of the worst shots ever conceived that I'm glad has gone out of favor. That Jaeger bomb. I don't know. Maybe Jaeger bombs are still very popular, but
See,
I
they were
love
popular in
Jaeger
the
bombs.
odds.
Jen, what's the dumbest thing you've bought?
I mean, it's horrible, but the only word that keeps going through my head is my dog.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh my God!
You get
listeners,
so much
write in with
love
your
out
hate
of your
mail
dog.
and cue the hate mail.
You're
Jen
just
is a
so pissed off
monster.
because right now you are in a 5-figure death spiral
I
on
know.
the amount of money that is going towards surgery for your dog.
I know, we just spent $6,000 on her surgery, and now she's just a pain in my ass because she's wanting to play, but she has stitches, and so we can't let her play, and she's not letting us sleep. So it's like, why did I purchase this dog for $150?
You know what? Though?
Just cost me tens of thousands, but like for real, for $500, and I'm still angry about this. I got an email where it was basically implying that I was up for a Webby Award, and I was like, okay,
Jesus.
I know, and
I've
to
gotten
just
this email.
and I fell for it, man. I gave the fucking Webbies $500 and was not even like considered. Like I didn't even make the top 10. And I'm like, why the fuck are you emailing me? And so now they still pitch me every year because I'm a sucker, and I get so angry.
I think that's my silver medal dumb purchase, Jen. I don't think I paid $500. I think I paid $200 or $300 or something.
You got discount Webbied? God,
I don't
I got
remember
full
'cause
price Webbied.
I'd had friends that had got Webbies before, and at the time, I thought I've observed this phenomenon in several successful people that I've interviewed, where they'll come on the show and from what I can tell, they've got a few awards that they get, and then they just snowball, where they've got these awards, and then people are like, well, they must be amazing. Look at this award they got, and then they'll give them another award, and it'll just keep going, and eventually, without making this up, they become a Knight Chevalier of the French Empire. I've interviewed 2 Knight Chevaliers, and I've asked them, I'm like, how did you become a Knight Chevalier? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Just the French. No, the French didn't fucking notice you. You made that happen. How did you do it? So yeah, I did something like that, and then rapidly was like, oh, this is almost certainly an inside like group of panelists that are glad handing each other, and I don't plan to participate in that again.
I mean, I got bit by my own ego in that one because I wanted to say I got
validation.
I wanted the Webby, but isn't it like? Do you guys feel like if you have to pay to be considered for an award, it's not a real award? Because it means that not everyone's considered. Like you're not the top podcast if all of the podcasts aren't in the running.
I looked at it entirely mercenary wise. I didn't give. I know I produce a good show. I don't have any doubt about that. What I wanted was a shingle that I could hang to get more people to listen to the show. If I had to pay for it, I didn't give a shit. But I didn't really need it for the ego. I wanted it for the functional element, which didn't happen.
I wanted both, and I got bit
though,
in my egotistical ass.
Of like, what are the things that
testicles?
What are the things that you've bought that have been the best use of money? I think probably the 2 things that I've spent money on that were the best were my Kindle. I think just pound for pound, I've got so much use out of that. It's like $150. Now they make them waterproof. What? And I have one that can fit in a blazer pocket. Amazing, right? So that's been really good money. The other one, honestly, Wallace.
I love the waterproof Kindle is what excites you, just because I know you would be materially excited by getting to read Kindle books in the bath.
Yeah, 100%. I'm a big. I've taken a break. I've taken a break from baths for a little while for some reasons, but I am a bath aficionado. I really want to go back to Budapest. They've got splendid baths, and I will be ready for it with my Kindle. But in terms of like
Kindle and his cowboy hat and a
you know what? I'd wind up in some Instagram photos if I wore a cowboy hat to the Budapest public baths. I definitely that might be like that'll be my Wes Anderson moment for that year. But I was going to say that dogs are expensive. Wallace has been stupid fucking expensive this last year. He keeps getting into like weird scrapes, and like he ate some hobo's dinner and got horrible food poisoning. Whenever you take him to the vet, if you take them there at like 3 a.m., which is what I do, they're like, well, we got to do an X-ray, which means we got to call some guy in Canada. And it's really goddamn expensive. That
Well,
being
you
said,
refused to get pet insurance. I don't know why you refused.
I've got
You
pet insurance
did?
now. I
I'm
finally
so
got pet
proud.
insurance. Well, we'll
Good.
see if it does anything. I got pet insurance. I wish I'd done it day fucking one. But I think Wallace to adopt Wallace cost I think $200 from the shelter. I want to say that's what it was. So just calling that the initial purchase, that has really been a game changer. So like I'm an extrovert and I live alone and I work remotely. Work remotely, 3 days of the week. And prior to We're Not Wrong was working remotely 5 days of the week. Having a little buddy that I can wake up and be like, hey man, you want to go on a walk? Really, really like raised the floor on the occasional spirals of depression that I sink into. Like it was a real game changer for me in terms of just having kind of a level of not being lonely that I could count on. It was a good Wallace was a good purchase, even with all the medicine or all the bills that have racked up.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I was kidding about Abby, especially for those first 6 years when I was in the Bay Area and just not liking it. Like having my little bed was great. And I will enjoy her again once all 4 of her legs work. But right now, it's a
I
struggle.
probably
Just
should
get a couple
mention
more.
that
Get like a 5th and 6th leg.
the
I
amount
legit,
of
my
money,
little niece wants me to get wheels for her so that she has like 2 back wheels. I was like, that would make an even more mobile. The problem is she's not supposed to be mobile at all, but it would be cute. Sorry, Justin, what were you saying?
I will say that the amount of money that I have complained the most about spending is definitely my college education. I have gotten the most complaints out of that, which is a little hypocritical because I did meet a lot of really good people. No, I mean, do I? When have I ever applied for a job? Like when have I
But
ever?
the skills you learned, you use every day. You do.
But I didn't learn them in class. I learned them outside of class. So it's like the benefit was that I was on campus and I did another thing that was next to the campus. That being said, I still do think that I 50-50 chance I didn't go to college and I probably would have been better off, but I don't know. You can't know for sure.
Yeah. I think back on the stuff I learned in college and I do appreciate it. Like I understand the
I
frustration.
learned to have a taste for Jaeger bombs, which is again the other problem.
Yeah,
what's
there was
weird?
a lot of money burned.
The college class I probably got the most bang for my buck on was the one that I thought was useless and didn't want to attend because my degree was I had 2 majors. I did history and religious studies, both of which have really done a
Money
bang-up
makers.
job making me money. Yeah, because of the
Yeah.
big history factory down the street. There's
Scourge
actually a
of
lot of
duck-level
religious
cash.
factories where I'm from, but I'm an atheist now, so I can't cash in.
Andrew, you pull historical facts out of your ass constantly on this show that you make money for. I actually
Yeah.
think that education did you well.
Yeah, I'm not complaining. What I was saying though was that the one that I got real bang for my buck on that I'm genuinely glad that I took from a like long-term mental skill set perspective. There was some class liberal arts majors had to take, like you had to take math classes.
Yeah.
You had to take like one math class. And the one they had was like logic for dumb fucks or something. I don't remember what it was. But it was something like that, logic for dumb fucks. Where like they were like, we will not make you do math. But it's kind of, if you like turn your head and squint, it's math because it's logic. And I did have this like early exposure, like age 21, to logical fallacies, which has served me very well. I'm indebted to the University of Oklahoma for that, in that I'm probably less prone to logical fallacies than I would have been, and try to avoid careening into them due to that mental training. Thank you, OU.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, we'll stop the college stuff because I know I do it too much. We're Not Wrong Pod at gmail.com is where you need to go if you want to write into the show, just like these fine folks. Beer Wars writes, the UK is closer to the United States than Germany in beer variety. My German friend says you walk into a German bar and there will be 6 beers, and they'll all be predictably good and predictably similar. In the UK, the hits are better, but the misses are worse. And I will say that my experience in the UK is that if you try a beer, it might be truly awful. I think like that is like a newer beer that is like it's like trying to be kind of an American beer. Those are some of the worst shit I've ever drank. But then again, there are like really, really solid UK beers. So I would agree.
Yeah, there's as somebody that is probably going to get tanked in about an hour here in the UK. The thing that I find really funny, and it's less now that we live in a like hyper globalized economy, it's less of a deal. When I first started coming over to Edinburgh back in '08, I'd go to some pub and they would be very excited to have an American beer. So like I would walk in and they'd be like, "Oh, did you know we got Bud Light?" And I'd be like, "Well, you can keep that, dude." I'm not excited about Bud Light and even Coors, which is my go-to crummy beer of choice. Like I'm still probably going to opt for something else. I used to drink at the Tron, which is down the street from here, and back in the day, your options were Tennants and Tennants with bits of light bulb in it, and that was fine.
What's funny is the random American craft beer that will be somewhere like in Europe. There'll be like some pub where it'll just be like 4 casks and then, like Lagunitas. Like there'll just be like like one weird American beer that's always fun. Volunteer Stasi writes, I want to talk on a thread that ran through your show with Jeremy. For most of the 80s, the Soviet bloc existed. People under the KGB, Stasi, and Secretariat, they were terrified that any given conversation could ruin them. Today, that fear manifests on the American left. Maybe the Republican Party is more tribal, but as the libertarian outsider in almost every social group, my experience differs. I can tell Republican friends that I didn't vote for Trump. I'm for drug legalization, and I want a smaller military. I like immigrants. I watch CNN, and I even supported Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan, and I'll still be invited for dinner. Conversely, I've lost Democratic friends because I don't hate Trump enough, because I don't defer to climate change enough, and because I question the need for a 4th COVID booster.
I don't buy it. I don't think this person called their Democrat friends and said, hey, I noticed we're not hanging out that much and we're not going to dinner. Why is that? And they said, well, it's because you don't hate Trump enough. Like, I
have fucking lived that. But I want to, I don't think that it's so much a progressive thing or a Republican thing or a libertarian thing. I think it's a human thing. I talked to Jonathan Rauch about this on my program a couple of years ago, where I brought up the phenomena that the listener's describing that I have a firsthand experience with, which is when I was living in New York, when Trump got elected, there was several people for whom I became unacceptable. They had met me when I identified as a capital L libertarian that would go off on very libertarian screeds, which are, I was much more that than I am now. I'm much more moderate, and I had moderated quite a lot by 2016. And I had people that cut me out of their life. What changed was that Trump got elected. And I looked at that and was like, this is so weird, because when Obama was in office, you were fine with what you regarded as a quirky position. And now I am closer to you. I'm closer to the middle than when we met. And yet I am now persona non grata. So I think that absolutely happens. And the part that I find interesting is like, well, why? What is happening there? In my experience, not everybody, but when I disagree with conservatives, I find they tend to think that I'm naive. They tend to think that I'm very academic and I don't really have real-world chops, and they sort of dismiss me in a naive kind of way. When I argue with progressives, there's a higher likelihood that they're going to think that I'm just a shitbag. And so I do find this phenomenon
morally defective.
You don't
morally,
know
but I want to stress, though, I don't think that this is something that's unique to any political persuasion. I think that this is a human thing of the out group is always suspicious. And I think that that's part of what's going on. So, like, one of the blind spots that I have that I can't get around is I'm living in blue cities. So the people that I'm hanging out with are always if they're conservatives or libertarians or moderates or whatever, they're generally going to be the minority in that city, which means that structurally they're going to know lots of people that they disagree with, and they kind of have to mind their P's and Q's. It's possible that if we were to invert this, and if I were to go to a bright red county, that I'd feel the exact same way about conservatives. That in that circumstance, where the conservatives are the majority one, maybe they would feel that I'm an evil shitbag, and that the liberals there that I would be hanging out with that are in the minority would be much more moderate and much more nice. So I do think there's something to this, but I think it's really speaking to a facet of human nature that we need to be on guard for, which is that there's always a temptation to dehumanize people that we see as the other. And there's probably structural reasons for why that happens. And the structural reasons to me are more interesting than trying to describe one group or the other as worse or evil.
Since I called out the emailer, I will ask you the question.
As a liar.
I don't know. I think that people make assumptions when you want to think that it's your politics, but maybe you have bad breath. Like, you don't know why people aren't inviting you anymore. So it's like, Andrew, did you ever reach out to these people that were in your life that you say cut you out and ask them why?
I had. Can I give you one example that I think is
Sure.
kind of emblematic of it? There was a time where I was hanging out with a lady, not romantically. She was dating a friend of mine. We were hanging out, and we'd had a beer, and I went, I'm very bothered by the fact that I'm single. I thought I was going to get married years ago. I haven't. I think that there's something defective about me that precludes this, and that there's something broke that I can't identify. I'm really worried about it. I really wanted to get married and have kids, and it's not happened. I'm worried about this. And she laughed and said, I guess you should have thought of that before you became libertarian, and then walked away. So, that was one of the most cruel, hurtful things anybody's ever said to me, and it was
Yeah, that's
directly
really mean.
political. So, and that I should say is an aberration. And I also want to clarify, I don't think that this is most people or most progressives or most Democrats. I have lots and lots of Democratic friends. I live in D.C. I lived in New York. I lived in Austin. So I think that, I guess the phenomenon that probably the listener and I are both experiencing as well is that we don't think of things statistically. We think of things in terms of the vibrancy of the feeling. So, of course, I remember that very, very vividly. That it's not emblematic of the majority of Democrats I hung out with. I'm still very good friends with my improv team, all of whom voted for Bernie Sanders in the primaries, all of whom are registered Democrats, or alternately, the Democrats aren't Democrat enough and they're independents, or something to that effect. But yeah, I do think that this happens. It's, I think that it's human nature. I don't think that there's any political persuasion that just sort of makes you a dick. I think that there is a tendency amongst humans to prescribe negative motivations to the out-group, and that there's no actual benefit in life from dehumanizing people.
Well, and I think people also want to hang out with people, especially in times where talking about politics feels like you're asking for a fight. It might not be anything personal, but you just might not want that person there that could be the spark that ruins the evening. It might not be anything personal, or it might not have anything to do with that. I would just encourage people, if you're making these assumptions and you're losing the friend anyway, to reach out and ask why. Because maybe it's something you have absolutely no idea what it is and has nothing to do with politics, but it's just I find that lately we tend to just assume that the politics is the reason, and maybe a comment made politically was a part of it. But there's some people that I don't like hanging out with, and we do have different politics, but it's because of other things, It's just I don't know. I just think prescribing relationship status to politics, maybe we should ask before we assume.
I would agree, Jen, in general, that a lot of things go into it. I have not experienced this phenomenon at all. Now, obviously, I do not identify my political opinions. I tend to get into a lot of political discussions, but they conform to the way that I like to have political discussions, which is if this is good or if this is going to win or not, and stuff
Balls
like that.
and strikes.
Exactly. So it's I can do that in a way that pleases people, and I can do it in a funny enough way that nobody really gets mad at me. I'm very rarely pressed for my own political opinion, and if I am, then I usually just drown it in historical context until they just stop being interested in whatever my actual opinion is. That being said, I do think that there has been a phenomenon since 2016 of relationships being hurt by way of political dialogue. And I do think that it is disproportionately from the left and not the right, specifically in the MAGA world, where nobody on the right, or nobody in the MAGA right specifically, had any idea that they were in the position of power until now, literally in 2024, that they identified with the majority of the country. They thought of themselves as a smaller part of the country. They were identified by the media as that, and they were often looked at. There's a reason why the deplorable thing caught on, because it spoke to this element of conservative thought that we are pariahs, and so they decided to wear it proudly. But it's hard to kick somebody out from a group that very few people want to be in, and anybody who does is loudly proclaiming it, right? The left believe that they had cultural hegemony, and when there is now a breakaway side of it, it is more disqualifying. If you are not agreeing to these basic tenets. And I do think, at least from my perspective of who has cut who out of people's lives adjacent to me, very rarely has it been a conservative that's like, oh my God, they're way too liberal. Far more commonly, it's, well, we don't talk to blank anymore. He's a Trumper. That I've seen the latter far more than I've seen the former. I don't believe, like Heaton said, that it's necessarily hewed to the political beliefs themselves, nor does it smear every conservative as pure and every progressive as mean-spirited and small. But I do think that based on our large-scale sociological map that we've had, I can understand the progressive point of view or the liberal point of view of saying, wait a minute, now you're a racist? How did I not know that you were a racist until now because you enjoy Donald Trump? Like that is something that I can understand from a Game of Thrones
and it's,
point
Jen,
of view.
to your credit, I think part of the reason perhaps that you are inclined to dismiss this is because you are not the kind of person that he's talking about at all. You and I will fight like cats and dogs on political economy. It doesn't affect our friendship. It never has. You're not a partisan person at all. You have deeply held beliefs, but they're not partisan. You're not a group thinker at all. And I know that you have many people in your life that you love very much that are Republicans. So you're not this person at all. I think Justin's correct. Like there's a lot of people I talk to that will say things offhand like that of, like before you meet those neighbors, you should know they voted for Trump. And it might just be that level, but like I don't really hear that when I'm hanging out in conservative circles as much of, just so you know they voted for Obama. But again, the thing that I could be subjected to is I think that homogeneity breeds contempt. I think if you find a group of people that really just have friends they agree with, they're going to have really extreme views and they're going to have really bad views of the other people. And because I live in cities, all the Republicans and all the Libertarians I know are a political minority that have friends they disagree with. And maybe it would be different. If I lived in Gomorrah, Oklahoma, and everybody were Republican, maybe I would feel the exact same way. It might be a phenomenon that's going on. But I will say, like,
dismiss that it's happening because, I see it directed at me. Like there's people that hate me. So, I get it. But I've also seen situations where there was assumptions made, and I'm going to be careful here, but there was a recent situation where two friends, we'll call one lefty, we'll call one MAGA, where MAGA thought that lefty was basically like abandoning him. But it turned out lefty just wasn't feeling well for months, So it's just like, I think that when you're looking at friends and being like, why am I not invited to dinner? We don't want to ask because sometimes we don't want the answer. And so we make assumptions. And I think that there's so many assumptions happening that maybe you're losing friends and thinking that it's one thing when it could be like, oh, you insulted my wife. And like, you don't realize it. But like, I think we should be more willing, if these people are actually your friends, to ask why.
You could just say, hey, I think Trump's tax cuts were a meaningful benefit to the economy. Just ask your bitch wife.
We'll put on all of that. That's entirely true. And I think you're right. We tend to project things. I probably overdo that. I think I have a lot of psychic wounds from living in New York in 2016 and 2017 that have not been resolved. So it's very likely that I'm doing that. That being said, though, I had an episode right before.
Were you still working for Glenn Beck at that time? I'm trying to.
No, it was before that.
Okay.
No, this was when I left Fox Business because I didn't want to be at Fox when Trump was there.
People were still mean
to
you.
I quit my job to go work at Reason, which is not pro-Trump.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, too, is I think when people feel under duress, the zone of acceptable opinions changes. That it's not actually based on your opinion. It's when I feel threatened, I hug in.
Yeah.
And the which is why, like, I could go through and be like, but I literally am closer to you now than when we met in 2010. It really didn't have anything to do with me. It had to do with the fact that the people felt threatened.
If I can also mark this, libertarians, what I'm going to say has nothing to do with how you define libertarianism. I'm going to put this up front. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to how people talk about you. The word libertarian got thrown around a lot during the Tea Party movement. And I'm not saying, again, libertarians, I'm not saying that the Tea Party movement was libertarian. I am saying how it was characterized specifically on the left, that was looked at as, okay, well, the Tea Party movement is libertarian, and so now what you think of the Tea Party is libertarian, and that often was very populist and at times racially tinged, at least from the leftist caricature of it. The left has no distinction, really, between the Tea Party and MAGA. They look at that as a straight line. And I do think that there are plenty of ways that if you really dig into it, you can see the connection. I think that they're very much there, but the left does not see any difference between it. So now libertarian went from the, oh, I'm into pot or I'm into guns thing that libertarians define it as, and they have millions, trust me, they will keep you busy for days and days and days explaining what a libertarian is, to a very simplified thing, which is the populist right, oftentimes in caricature, racially animated. And so post-Trump winning, libertarian was not this odd duck-like part of the political spectrum. You were the rocket fuel for Donald Trump's ascendancy in the eyes of leftist people who, again, have no bearing on how the libertarians listening to this define libertarianism. And so I do think specifically in that instance, in Heaton's instance and in this emailer's instance, that does play into it, in my opinion, because I certainly heard it from my liberal friends that would throw around the word libertarian. And I'm not a libertarian, but I would be like, Jesus, I wish to sentence you to a room of 8 libertarians so you can explain to them what libertarianism means, and they will talk to you so much your ears will collapse into your skull.
It's a very accurate assessment. I'm not going to wade into that territory, Justin, but on the political orphanage, I don't do it every year, but I do a survey every other year or so. And when I first started doing the show, I was really worried that I would alienate the audience if I went in some aberrant direction, because I'm not trying to prop up a dogma and serve it at all costs. I am trying to figure out how to make the world work better and help people. And so I was worried, well, what if I do something that's not libertarian? Because a lot of the people that listen to my show came over from Reason. And so one of the questions was, how do you politically identify? And about half of my audience was like libertarian. About a quarter was like moderate or like disaffected conservative. And then a quarter was like 15 hyphens. I am this unique thing that has 15. I'm a non-monarchical, anti-corporatist, libertarian, volunteerist, anarchist, or whatever. And I'm like, okay, all right. Does anybody that has 2 hyphens, I'm going to put you in the 2 hyphen category.
Yeah.
And,
no, libertarians have more definitions for libertarianism than non-binary people have neopronouns.
There are more definitions for libertarians than there are libertarians, yes.
Yes.
Well, and as someone who was living in the Bay Area in 2016, I will back Justin up because, you know, the Tea Party was taxed enough already. Ron Paul was kind of the beginning of it, and then it got co-opted by the Koch brothers and the money and Freedom Works and all that stuff. And you had Rachel Maddow on TV every night talking about how the Tea Party is this bunch of wingnuts, and it became a different thing. And so the libertarian label just kind of traveled with it. And so the people that just didn't understand and didn't quite frankly give a shit, but just saw like, these are the people that made Trump happen, you got the brand. Like it tainted your brand, basically. And so for the people that have never been to a libertarian convention and have absolutely no idea that you guys have very different cliques and groups, and it's very economic, and it's like liberals or people that don't interact with you have absolutely no idea about any of that. No clue.
It's part of why I have identified as an independent for 10 years now. I have not self-identified as a libertarian, nor do I think of myself as libertarian for 2 reasons. One, I don't think it does any good for what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to understand things and promulgate good ideas, and it doesn't seem to me to be good at all for me to hand people a hammer with which to beat me. And then the other bit is also I find that it's liberating for me because it means that I don't have to uphold any particular doctrine or belief, which I don't want to do. I want to arrive at my own beliefs by my own accord. And
you should identify as a long sigh libertarian. Like you should just be like, what are you eating?
I'm just an independent. I'm just an independent. But I think you're both absolutely right. The term it means very different things. Like I watched Fargo. Have you guys seen Fargo?
With the wood chipper.
Which one? Which
I saw the
season or the
movie.
movie?
The season with John Hamm's amazing. It's great.
Yes.
And
I've
there's
seen the movie.
there's a moment
That's
where
the latest one, yeah.
he like he's getting interviewed by a federal agent or something. And he's like, "Well, I guess you could call me a libertarian." And I'm like, he's like a theocrat. Like he's
Yes.
But in Hollywood speak, it just means like extreme conservative with a cowboy hat. Like that was their interpretation.
I think it was true to
conservative
that
plus 5.
character. It was true to that character that he was a megalomaniac who was running his own compound.
Maybe
Like,
I don't think he would have been okay with like people smoking pot. I don't think.
I
he was
also
gonna be
don't think
real
that
happy with.
But
throuples.
again, the problem with a libertarian group is nobody can
Yeah.
agree with each other on
My-
what the
my-
most
my
important
friend,
thing to be liberated from is, and that tends
Andrea-
to define.
Andrea Jones-Roy, a good friend of mine, who's a very funny comedian, says that libertarians are the vegans of the political world, which I think is a very
I
apt
know.
observation.
They're more vegans than the Greens, who are the actual vegans.
But it's not just libertarians. I feel like all political labels at this point have lost all meaning because there's so much breath wasted in trying to define what it means to be a conservative or a progressive or a
Yeah.
green or whatever the fuck. Like, I think any conversation that devolves into labeling your politics is wasting your time when you could be talking about policies and whether you support them or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, Republican and Democrat are helpful in that they are coalitional branding. Are you willing to call yourself one of those two things? If you are, you're in the coalition. If you're not, you're not. And those are the two coalitions that run for power every year in elections, big and small. If you're defining your own personal beliefs, I think that's what you should stay on to as opposed to a political philosophy that can be debated endlessly. But then again, there are some people that just really get off on debating their political philosophy and what it really does mean and what it really doesn't mean. That is something that libertarians and leftists really, I curse you all to live in one fucking commune and just do nothing but debate the labels of exactly what a libertarian is and exactly what a fucking leftist is.
Yeah, nothing dries me up faster than that conversation.
That statement assumes the reality that there is a political dialogue that's a real gusher.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein. No Balls writes, I have to disagree with you, Justin. The Epstein deal in Florida was because the prosecution had no balls. It didn't matter that the girls said that they loved him. As long as you can establish that there were sexual acts performed and they were below the age of consent, that's rape. It could even help your jury appeal to say that they loved him. Then your closing argument becomes that he screwed this girl up so much that she thinks that that was an assault, that assault was an act of love. You say that while displaying pictures of the victims in the time frame, showed the jury it was just a child to make the narrative about damaging her young mind. This email reminds me a lot. Stephen A. Smith, the sports commentator, is famous for, with a straight face, saying that if he were to have prosecuted O.J. Simpson, he would have gotten a conviction. Sometimes looking into the world of legal cases is very easy from the cheap seats. I tend to believe, at least by the contemporaneous notes that I thought was very, very well laid out by Michael Tracy in his Substack, even the most aggressive of the prosecutors in that office believed that it was going to be very difficult to secure a conviction in Palm Beach with Epstein's level of lawyers, which he did have an extraordinarily powerful legal team, that the witnesses saying that not only did they love him and they didn't want to testify, but B, they lied about their age to him and pursued him, that would be enough to not get a conviction. Now, you might think you are a great lawyer, or you would have been a great prosecutorial effort here, and all the evidence was laid out. That's fine. They disagreed, and I tend to believe their extemporaneous notes that it was that, and not because Mossad called them and said, let him go. And that, I think, was really my larger point there, is that we have spun out a lot of the mythology about Epstein around these fuzzy facts that we just kind of put together because Epstein's girlfriend's father was connected to Israeli intelligence, and Epstein has a Jewy last name, that means that he was definitely Mossad. And I think that's all I was trying to point out, is that there's a lot of this mythology that just kind of yada, yada, yadas itself together. Tinfoil Dick writes, there are generally kernels of truth to every conspiracy theory because there's shady stuff everywhere. For example, the CIA invented crack to stop Hunter Biden from becoming our 50th president. That dieting is invented by the Illuminati to give daytime television hosts something to talk about. Princess Diana was an agent of Mossad who was embedded in Egyptian high society, and whatever she discovered got her killed. The Democratic leadership has been having terrible ideas for the past 15 years because androchrome and Ozempic combined causes severe delusional behavior. And finally, I could go on forever, but I must take my car to the shop today because I'm hearing a ticking noise that won't stop. Excellent email. And finally, on the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Blinking writes, Trump firing the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics is like breaking your gas gauge because it says you have low gasoline.
Yep.
And Bad Times writes, I agree with JJ that this firing potentially undermines all future economic projections. I hope Trump replaces her with whomever is next in line, because to Justin's point, that might be less damaging, but I'm worried that the general population who doesn't follow economic data closely, like reading BLS reports, not just unemployment and inflation headlines from the news, has already lost faith just by this display of authoritarianism, cause Biden appointee.
Do you guys want to give the update or should I?
So the update is that has he been named, or is it only
He's been named
leading?
the Heritage Foundation
Is it
guy
Big
that
Balls?
wants to stop doing the reports entirely.
So yeah, he
good.
was named, or he is about to be named.
I mean, we know his name. I don't
All right,
know
we
if
know
it's
his name.
official, but like,
Yeah. So
we
the
know who it is.
rumored. That's all I want to know, whether to put rumored or confirmed.
Let's put rumored
replacement
on it for now, but it's looking.
is somebody that does not have BLS experience. And to be fair to their point, Jen has given the summation for which many people have said. Their point is that he wants to overhaul the jobs report to be quarterly and not monthly, because his belief is that the surveys will have less revisions if you do it quarterly and not monthly.
Yeah, I just think that putting a Heritage Foundation guy in there after all this, it's just going to make people not trust the numbers, including me, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is usually Will Saddleberg, but I'm going to pitch in this week. On PX3, we're taking a little bit of a summer vacation. You know, I realized this week that in the past I've actually left and like taken a month off from the show, and I hired guest hosts. And then last year I didn't do it because of the election. And this year I'm just taking one episode off. So there's only one episode. It already came out. Me and Kevin Ryan talking about the 2025 stories that won't die. There's more Epstein in there. There's more Sydney Sweeney in there. It's a good time. And then he mentions Roland Barthes because he's Kevin Ryan. And so that's always a fun time. So go ahead and get that now. Mr. Andrew Heaton, who's wandering into the orphanage this week?
I think I had alluded to this when last I did this program. I don't recall if we were on or off camera. I think on camera. But shortly before I left Washington, D.C., I hung out with Joe Manchin in a basement, along with Ken Buck and Mark Sanford and some other people that had been ejected.
Appalachian
or left-
Trail, Mark Sanford?
Appalachian Trail Mark Sanford was hanging out with him in a basement. And there were a lot of journalists and a lot of other people there too. It wasn't like just us, but there was an event put on by the Independent Center. The Forward Party showed up, No Labels showed up, kind of everybody other than the Libertarians and the Greens that was like, I don't like the two-party system.
All the useless people. Go ahead.
All of the groups. Well, see, and that's what I wanted to talk to them about, is the Independent Center, I think, is running an interesting play where No Labels, as Justin will be quick to point out, every 4 years we'll make Strom and Drang, whatever that is, about
Storm and
running
Drang.
Storm and Drunk, thank you. We're running a moderate candidate because the Republicans and the Democrats have gone too extreme, and then they'll think about it, and then they'll blanch at the last minute and say, well, we don't want to run a spoiler, and we're not confident we can win. And this tends to be one of the problems that bedevils independent runs. Same with the Forward Party. The Forward Party didn't run anybody in the last election at the presidential level for fear that that would happen. The Independent Center is specifically trying to find districts that have a large purple swath of voters that flip, and is going to try to run strong independent candidates. And their goal is to get 3 to 6 independents elected to Congress. And by doing so, to have a kind of kingmaker vote that they could do in Congress. It's an interesting strategy. I think that it is more likely to work than just trying to get a third-party president to run and win. Or trying to create a giant third-party movement. They're not trying to create a giant third-party movement. They're trying to have a razor-thin wedge that they can jam into Congress when there is a very, very thin majority that's happening there. So I thought it was an interesting conversation. We also talk about some of the stats that are going on of Jen, you're laughing? What?
Sorry, I have to pee so bad, and you just keep talking. Sorry.
Well, now would be the time.
Yeah, go. You don't say anything else in the episode. Go.
My episode's about Big Beautiful Bill. Listen to it. Bye.
Bye.
Kind of feel like that took the wind out of the sails there, Justin.
No, you want to talk about what we think is on her episode?
I think she probably turned around on it. She thinks the Big Beautiful Bill is really beautiful and big now. She's a big fan of it.
She's like, I know I said a lot of shit, but I think that we should have deployed federal troops to L.A., and I think that this is as big as it is beautiful. Sorry. Okay, go ahead and finish. So the idea is that they are trying to put in a spoiler candidate into
they're trying to run spoiler
Congress.
Candidates, and they're looking at it going, you haven't had a majority of more than what, like eight members in the House for 10 years. I don't remember, something like that. So they're looking at that going like, look, if we can get 5 people in, then we're able to have some actual cachet to make things happen, which I think is an interesting strategy. I pushed back on them a lot. Because I think that there's all sorts of mirages that happen with independents that I brought up. So, like, for example, Joe Manchin, who was in the basement, technically not a blue dog. I'm going to call him a blue dog. People know what I'm talking about. He was a blue dog, right? When I was working for the Blue Dog Coalition, I realized that blue dog meant very different things depending on which blue dog you were talking to.
Yes.
So blue dog meant conservative Democrat. I was on the wing of the family that was a Democrat that was fiscally conservative. But you might be a Democrat that loved FDR that just didn't like gay marriage, which would be the opposite of my perspective. And so even the Blue Dog Coalition was this, you're conservative, but potentially about very different things.
It was basically a hooky notice for orthodoxy. For like, if you were not an orthodox Democrat, then you were a blue dog.
Democrat with an asterisk. I'm an asterisk Democrat.
Because you can win in a red county.
Yeah, and I think that happens with a lot of independents as well, where like you look at the numbers and like there some interesting stuff's going to happen. Like particularly as the baby boomers fade away and the millennials take the reins. Like baby boomers are much more set; they're much more likely to vote partisan. Millennials are way more independent, both functionally and in terms of labels. So there is this giant group, and we kind of drill into it, and you go, well, like why are you independent? About half the people are like. I think that the Republicans and the Democrats have become too extreme, and I'm in the middle, and I've been left out. But the other half go, well, the problem is that they're both the same corporate centrist party, and what we really need is a socialist. What we really need is a libertarian.
Yeah.
So these are very different. Like they're not extreme enough, and they're too extreme, or too very different. So anyway, I test them. It's a very interesting conversation to have with an independent trying to run a strategy of me trying to poke holes in it and seeing if they can pull it off.
Can't wait to listen to it. All right. And Jen looked at the Big Beautiful Bill, and she loves it. Mm-hmm. That's it. She's so excited. She's so excited. Jen, you agree, right?
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
For Andrew Heaton and Jen Briney, I'm Justin Robert Young, and we're not wrong.